Welcome back. It's exactly 19 after 9 o'clock. This is News and Views on Solar Media, and our next guest is Dr. Dale McKinley. He is a political analyst, and we are looking at the GNU Parties gearing up for the Crucial Cabinet Lekgotla, which, of course, is happening next week, and undoubtedly, I should imagine land reform is going to be on the top of their agenda and a whole host of other issues. Let's see what Dr. Dale McKinley thinks about this upcoming Lekgotla. Really good morning to you. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Julia, and to your listeners as well.
Okay, we're hearing that land reform and economic revival will be the focus of this Lekgotla. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think everybody's sort of, paying attention to what I guess you could say are the fights that are going on over the particular pieces of legislation. So I imagine that what we're going to see is we're going to see quite a lot of back and forth around the expropriation bill. The DA has already indicated that they're going to take it to court, and maybe a few other parties as well. You're probably going to see quite a lot of debate around the NHI bill, the National Health Insurance bill, as well. This has been very contentious, and several other aspects, probably in terms of some of the foreign policy issues, what's going on with Trump and the trade regimes, and what Trump has been doing in his first days of office. But I think that those things will probably dominate the media space. But below that, I think you're probably going to also have quite a lot of discussions about more domestic issues. Such as infrastructural program, which seems to be starting to be rolled out quite a lot. Some of the our school year is starting, the education issues and some of the shortcomings and challenges there. Regards to transport and rail and port issues, things that have been bottlenecks in our economy. So, and of course, job creation and how the promises that have been made by this GNU in relation to creating jobs. I think those will be the sort of background main issues. But what we'll probably get quite a lot of noise about in some ways are those big ticket legislative items where there's quite a lot of disagreement.
Yeah, you've touched on all the very key issues that impacts largely on all of us as South Africans. And I'm kind of wondering, is this just going to end up being another talk shop, or will we see action hereafter? I mean, you spoke about infrastructure, and what immediately jumps into my mind right now is the Bree Street, that gas explosion under the Bree Street precinct. Nothing's been done there. I think there were one or two contractors, and either they were not geared up for the job, or we don't know if people's palms had been crossed with silver, what the story was there. But that is still an issue. The obviously the capturing or the hijacking of buildings and the state of all of those hijacked buildings is an eyesore as well. So you kind of wonder, is this just going to end up being a talk shop, or will we in fact see results? You also talked about, all right, let me get you to respond to that, and then I'll touch on the other main issues that you threw out there at me.
Sure, Julie. I think, as most listeners know, there's a separation of our government into the three levels. And national, this is a national cabinet Lekgotla. So in relation, for example, what you mentioned in Johannesburg, the issues of infrastructural, the Bree Street issue, the water infrastructure in Johannesburg and Ranger.
I know it's very local. Yeah, it's localized, that I am aware of. But I'm kind of wondering, do these type of issues in fact get raised there? It might be an issue around budgets. It might be an issue around corruption. I don't know. But these are issues that impact on you and I and everyday people in the street.
Sure. I don't think they're going to be raised specifically at this cabinet Lekgotla. What I think will be raised is support or intervention into the provinces. If you remember now, the ANC has said they're going to reconfigure their own KZN and GP and Gauteng provinces. So I think there's a lot of concern at the national level about the functionality of local government and whether or not they should intervene and what they should be doing. Should they be providing more money, or should they be trying to clean house or whatever? So I think those are the bigger discussions that will happen in cabinet. They're not going to sit there and say, what should we do to fix Bree Street? What should we do to fix the 46 water reservoirs in Johannesburg that are leaking? What you'll get announcements by the ministers and sort of large scale sort of, yes, we're going to try to address these things and help local authorities. But I think the fundamental, should we say, challenge of this cabinet is that you have this multi-party GNU, many of whom also control in different ways or are very influential in these local and provincial governments, and how they can come together with a program that where national, provincial, and local are all working in the same direction. And I think that's the key, because national is not going to be able to tell Johannesburg exactly what they want to do or what they should do. And I don't think it's their job to do so. I think it's their job to provide some kind of strategic direction and overall direction. I think that's where, if they're going to get into those issues at this cabinet, they will. But in answer to your question, no, it's not going to deal with our day-to-day problems. No, this cabinet is not going to solve them now. This is a longer-term thing. We have, the city of Durban, for example, eThekwini. I mean, the challenges are huge there. And one can imagine that even if you did have a program, and even if there was enough of a budget and there was incredible capacity, and you had a change of political leadership, it would still take years to deal with those kinds of issues. So I think that's where the real challenge for this GNU is to set the frame and to set a strategic direction for dealing with all of those problems over a medium-term period.
So, Dr. McKinley, I use Bree Street as an example, a very tiny example. And we do know is when we look at infrastructure, we're talking nationally and provincially, obviously, and locally. Infrastructure is rotting all around the country. And I actually should have asked it from that standpoint of view. So, because you brought up the issue of infrastructure. So at a national level, will they look at the big picture regarding infrastructure? I mean, we're hearing about our highways that are degrading as well. And it's concerning. But you have, I guess you have, in a sense, answered how they would tackle these issues. The other very sore point is the NHI. And I'm kind of wondering how robust of a discussion will that become? Because I'll give you an example. I'm going to bring it right back locally as well. If you walk through the malls, you have these big internal screens that is promoting NHI and saying, we are here, we are introducing NHI, and watch the space and all of that. And I mean, I had shivers down my spine when I saw that, because NHS in a first world country is collapsing. That's in the UK. What chance have we got here in South Africa for them to be pushing NHI? And do you think this would then entail robust discussion at the Lekgotla?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be more than robust. I think it's going to be actually quite argumentative and quite confrontational, because these are not just practical issues, they're ideological issues that where the DA is not just saying, look, this is not workable, for example, and making the critique practically, but basically their idea is that you leave the private sector alone. You don't mess with private medical aids. You let them do their job. You try to deal with the public sector healthcare by itself, or at least there might be some cross-subsidization. But whereas the ANC's ideological stance is that we want a public healthcare system, at least, that is equal for all. I think where the real debates are going to happen are on two fronts. One is the money. Where's the money coming from? There's the medical aid industry is saying you're going to ruin us because you're going to take all of our, basically the funds, and then you're going to transfer them into a big national pot for public health care. And as a result, everything's going to deteriorate, this kind of argument. So I think that's the first thing, is the money issue, and where's the money coming from and how it's going to be used. And the second thing is management and capacity to manage the You mentioned the NHS in the UK, which has had some serious problems with, when you have such a huge health system. But there are other countries where the public health system works just fine. Scandinavian countries have public health systems. Canada has a public health system. There are there are several countries. Brazil has a partial public healthcare system, and so do several Asian countries. So I think where we are in South Africa right now is we have a GNU which is ideologically divided, and the NHI is a terrain on which to fight these ideological battles. The practical side of it, yes, that relates to every national health care insurance, regardless of whether it's South Africa or the UK or anywhere, about money and management. But I think it's about whether or not you actually provide public health care free for those who need it, and not just a clinic where you go to get a Panado or you go to get basically primary, but where you can go to get radiation, where you have a situation in Gauteng. I'm a cancer survivor. And also I understand there's many people that are dying because they simply can't get oncology. They can't get radiation. They can't get things in the public healthcare system. So these are real issues. And I think they are going to come to the fore in the Cabinet Lekgotla, and it's going to be a tableau, if you say, for a larger ideological battle.
Ongoing good health to you. I must say, you look like you're in the pinkest of health, and please God, may it remain so. The other very big issue is obviously employment and the revival of South Africa's economy. This is going to be a hot topic discussion as well. And I think it's going to be very heated, undoubtedly. What do you see, and how do you see this possibly playing out? If we don't create jobs, we're not going to have a robust economy, are we? And then, of course, there's also the issue of foreign investment. And I go back to the infrastructure question. And if we don't get that right, we're not going to get the foreign investment. We're not going to get the jobs rolling out. And we're right back to square one.
Yeah, so I think the main issue here is localization versus global, sort of relying on foreign direct investment. We've had an economy and we've had a ruling party up until the GNU came in that has basically adopted an attitude that the key to economic growth is attracting foreign investment, opening up the economy, attracting. It hasn't worked. For a range of different reasons, it's not worked. And I think we still have this mantra that if we don't get foreign direct investment, if we don't open up, our economy is going to hell in a handbasket, so to speak, as my mother used to say. So in that sense, the real issue is whether or not the GNU is willing to grasp the nettle of the structural constraints in the South African economy, which are local, which are when you don't support small scale and medium scale enterprises, you're not going to grow the economy. It's simple as that. Small scale and medium scale enterprises are the heart of the local economy in South Africa, whether that is in urban or rural areas. And what we have a tendency to do is focus on massive, big projects, massive, big developments, huge kinds of investments, which look very impressive and involve a lot of money, but create very few jobs. In others, a few thousand maybe. But we're talking we need hundreds of thousands of jobs. And that way, I think where the real issue is going to be is where do you put the money to grow the economy? Where do you rely? What sectors of the economy do you rely on? And how creative are you going to be able to be? So, for example, we know technology is moving. Things are changing. Big, heavy industry is falling behind. We can't compete with the Chinese in steel production. We've seen ArcelorMittal already starting to close and other big industries. So we're going to they need to become creative in terms of what is South Africa's strengths in relation to technology, for example. We can see Kenya has grasped this nettle. And the Kenya where you have young generations who are now IT hubs all over the place, growing an economy, creating jobs. These are the kinds of things that I think they're going to have to grasp. They're not going to do it at this Cabinet Lekgotla, but if they set the terrain, if they set the frame for the next at least 2 or 3 years in terms of investment in our local economies, I think that's where the key is. And I can't say to you whether or not they're going to do that, but I think if they don't, you're absolutely correct. We're going to be going around in circles again.
Okay. Everything that you threw out at me earlier on in the introduction, as you were speaking, I've just realized how interconnected all of it is, and each is a very important cog to make this wheel that is called South Africa to turn effectively and efficiently. So we talk about, I go right back to infrastructure, but that then also, when we talk, you spoke about ArcelorMittal. They are threatening to shut down simply because of lack of services. It's the interruption of electricity, of water, etc., etc., etc. And the same can be said for small and medium enterprises as well. So very many of them are shut down because of lack of services. And why do we have lack of services? Wholesale corruption amongst government officials and politicians themselves. So it's all interconnected. We talk infrastructure, we talk education, transport, employment. If you don't have the one, you're not going to have any success in the other. So yeah, that's where we sit at. But let's wrap up by talking about Superman himself, or shall I say demigod, Trump Almighty. How is, all his ravings and rantings about how he's going to penalize other countries, how's that going to impact on us in South Africa? And I kind of also wonder, are we going to be punished because South Africa took Israel to the ICJ? And would these type of issues get discussed at the Lekgotla, or are they going to be focused mainly on growing the South African economy?
No, I think they will be discussed. I think foreign policy issues and certainly foreign trade issues. I mean, Trump is rattling lots of cages. Obviously, we've seen it already just in the last few days. I mean, and he's so unpredictable. I think in relation to South Africa in particular, the main concern is AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which we've been part of for the last 20 years, which provides us duty-free access for many goods, including, for example, cars, including wine, including a whole range of other things that South Africa exports to the United States. And there is a real concern amongst South African, both business-wise as well as government, across the political divides, that Trump is going to act and say, well, we're going to kick South Africa out of AGOA because of these policy stances, because of Palestinian issue, because of the Russia relations possibly with Russia, which they've been very critical of, and so forth. I don't think it's going to happen. And the reason why I don't think it's going to happen is I think that they're going to try to squeeze South Africa, and they're going to pressure South Africa on a range of fronts. But the bottom line for business in the United States and those who support Trump, who are big businesses, is that South Africa is the gateway, is the business gateway to sub-Saharan Africa. And it is, if you were to squeeze South Africa and kick it out, your impact across the rest of the continent would be severely affected in terms of access. And the reason why this is important, particularly to the Trump administration, is minerals, is rare earth minerals, is minerals that are necessary for the IT sector, for electric car manufacturing. Elon Musk, of course, who's the biggest contributor to Trump's campaign and now one of his leaders in government. So I think there's, in this case, possibly practicalities will trump ideology in the sense but I think that what they're going to try to do is he's going to try to throw threats and say, well, if you don't cooperate with us on other foreign policy issues, if you keep cozying up to Russia, or if you don't do such and such with Palestine and the Middle East, then we're going to make life more difficult for you. I don't think that that's going to be anything special to South Africa. I think Trump does that with every single country. He's threatening NATO. He's threatening Canada. He's threatening all sorts of countries. So in that sense, we just are going to have to, the cabinet's probably going to talk about how do we deal with the Trump presidency and how do we get around those kinds of things. And I think that's ironically probably where there's going to be some consensus around how South Africa should respond, because it's an economic primarily issue as opposed really to an ideological issue, because I don't think there's too many people in the cabinet that would be supporters, or at least public supporters of Trump.
Lots of interesting things post the GNU. I hope you and I can have a discussion then. Thank you indeed for your insights. Always lovely talking with you, and go well.
You too. Thank you so much.
It is 9:38 News and Views on Salar Media, moving on. And I think next we're going to cross over to Malawi, and we'll be talking with Sheikh Dinala Chabulika. He's with the Muslim Association of Malawi, and we're going to be looking at Aqsa Week in Malawi.